Welcome back to R2P Origins, this time for episode 3. The last episode I really talked about a story that I think is shared by a lot of PTs, in that my first experiences with the profession were because I got injured. So it was during my time at Ohio State, being a lacrosse player there, having my first injury, my first real injury, where I was faced with the decision of either having surgery or not having surgery. And this is where I really fell in love with not just the relationship side of the profession, but just the impact that you can have in a rehabilitation field. So working with my athletic trainer, working with the head PT there, working with the strength coach staff, even seeing them frequently communicate with sport coaches, that was where I saw the impact that one person could have among a team of professionals. So this multidisciplinary team being what I saw, and then going into PT school and seeing a little bit more of what I'd call like a siloed approach. And with a siloed approach, you see people that are largely focusing on whatever it is maybe their profession is, and not concerning themselves too much with, say, overlap, or as I'll put it, a Venn diagram. And it's not that we need to be everything as PTs, but I think it's very, very important that we have an awareness of fitness and then awareness of a more medicalized side, especially in the cases like I had, where I had this acute injury and this pain pattern that occurred as a result of trauma. So the ability to expand our Venn diagram, not expanding our expertise so much, but being this generalist that could speak to multiple professionals, have an educated conversation, and then ideally be a part of what I'll call this synergistic coordination of care for the individual, which was me at the time when I was at Ohio State. But going back to that siloed approach in PT school, just being overall just very, very underwhelmed at what I saw in terms of commercial models. I loved what I had at Ohio State. That's largely why our offices are gray and red, dare I say scarlet. But that was where the origins of Rehab2Perform were created. And then I saw another facility, one that was reserved for the highest level athletes possible. This was Athletes Performance at the time. It is now Exos. And really loving everything from Mark Verstegen's core performance book, some of the things that were coming out in terms of the Con Ed that they were creating, some of the people, the early influencers. I can think of people like Sue Falsoni and Nick Winkelman, and then also being exposed to people outside of that box, such as Charlie Weingroff, right? Training equals rehab, rehab equals training. And there being things that automatically were gravitating to me because of the experiences I had at Ohio State. And then going out and seeing commercial models that were that more siloed approach, more traditional, right? Very medicalized, much more sterile, didn't have the environment that I was used to, where athletes were generally excited to honestly go into the training room and touch base and see athletes from their team, see athletes from other teams. But overall, a very enjoyable environment, and then spending time like interning out with various PT clinics, going through even my rotations through PT school, and not seeing a ton of people who are interacting with the environment and being exposed to education and expertise in which prepared them for life outside of the four walls of the facility. It was, hey, you got injured. Hey, let's make sure that we get you to a point where you're not having pain, and see you later. Knowing that people need to be generally physically prepared for activities outside of the walls of the clinic, but also appreciating that when it came to more sports-oriented activities, there needed to be certain specific or individualized attention to certain movements, certain modes of conditioning, certain ways of preparing tissues. So there being this whole other layer where if I get back to that Venn diagram concept, where if we had expanded beyond just that, say, medical side of the spectrum, we dove into that fitness realm, that being something that was going to benefit that person a lot more. So that's kind of where Rehab2Perform in my head had started. I was starting to think about, hey, how could I deliver a commercial model that packaged some of the things that I've been familiar with, both through experience, and then as I'm starting to go through educationally. I remember people like Mike Reinhold being very, very influential early on. People like Eric Cressy, although not a PT, spoke a lot of his Venn diagram expansion into his understanding of the medical world. So those were the various different touch points that gave me this idea for Rehab2Perform and really set me off on a path where when I graduated from the University of Maryland in 2011, that I knew that I was on a relatively short clock to pay off my loans, learn as much as I could from the people that were employing me, put my time and energy into a side hustle, and we'll get on into that in a future episode, but ideally learn what I needed to do in 3 different areas with regards to social capital, intellectual capital, and financial capital to put myself in a situation where I was going to be able to put this idea in a very, very good spot to hit the ground running when Rehab2Perform opened its doors. So stay tuned to episode 4. Hopefully you've enjoyed the previous episodes and enjoyed this one as well. But in episode 4, I'll be diving into a little bit of that 3-year period from graduation to the point in which Rehab2Perform opened in December of 2014.